Tobago updates. Good morning, Tobago. Wake up with Kandace and Denise.
Let's go, go. It's a brand new morning. Rise up to a brand new dawning as the passion start to rise.
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates, viewers. And we are switching our conversations now to TUCO. The trend TUCO. So we have the TUCO elections coming up pretty soon, and it's been led over the past couple of years by Mr. Ainsley King, our very own Tobago-born Mr. Ainsley King. But on Sunday, they are going to be having their national executive elections. So joining us online to speak a little bit about that, we have Dr. Rudolph Ottley, and he is a candidate for president of TUCO. Good morning and welcome to you.
Good morning, and thanks for having me on your program this morning. And just to correct you, the elections are on Saturday, the 19th, and not Sunday.
All right. So give me an idea of, just some of your intentions going forward in these elections.
Well, first of all, I want to tell my colleagues in Tobago that I'm also from Tobago. My father was born on Ottley Street in Mount St. George, so that I have my roots in Tobago, and therefore I'm just trying to get back to the point whereby I can reinstate and also make the Tobago zone of TUCO a more vibrant, a more involved part of the TUCO family. So that's one of my main goals, to bring back TUCO Tobago into the mainstream of activities. Because of the information I've received is that over the past 2 years, the TUCO zone has been almost dormant. There's been no activities, a lot of infighting, misrepresentation, and therefore, once I'm given the opportunity to lead, that will be my major focus in the first couple of weeks of my administration.
And when you look at just the calypso industry and so on, what do you envision for it? Like, what do you think it should look like? Because, we get the complaints that, calypso is kind of like a dying art. And I mean, it's losing interest among the population, unfortunately. But, what is your vision? Like, how do you plan to get it back to its glory days?
And you're quite correct in that assessment. And that's because there's lack of leadership in the organization. I think since the demise of since the demise of Lutalo Musimba, we have been leaderless, and therefore, when the society recognizes that the organization is clueless or leaderless, then they pay little or no attention to what is happening, and therefore, we have to bring it back to the point whereby calypso becomes part of the mainstream of our culture. It is the first music of the new world, and therefore we must treat it as such. And to do that, we must update our systems. First of all, we must ensure that the administration of the art form becomes digitized, become modernized, and is part of the tech world. We must have apps to promote our programs. We must visualize the calypso tent in a different format. We must ensure our calypsonians are competent in the computer world. They use the modern systems to do their productions. We must ensure that the information of calypso is sent differently to the public. We can't rely only on a seasonal product, so that throughout the year we must be involved in the social activities and even the political activities in a way, taking part in the society. So TUCO must become more involved, and to do that we must ensure our membership is up to date technically and otherwise.
Now, as you mentioned the calypso tents, I know that was something that the generations before held so dear to calypso, especially leading up to carnival time. But that in itself, we're losing that bit from our culture. How can we, in this modern age, re-envision the calypso tent to fit the new generations and to make sure the art form stays alive?
Well, you're quite correct, but we must also recognize and contextualize why that shift from the calypso tent. Up to maybe 1999, there were less activities around carnival. But from the 21st century, you find that people are more engaged in other kinds of carnival-related activities. And obviously, the calypso tent or the traditional arts of carnival would have lost some of its support. Be that as it may, TUCO, we have not taken an aggressive approach to modernizing the calypso tents. And it has a lot to do with what I call the NCC Act of 1998 that authorizes TUCO to be responsible for calypso tents. TUCO has embraced that, but in a very negative way, whereby TUCO focuses only on tents under its umbrella. And by creating that atmosphere, what TUCO has done basically is to provide a lot of employment for calypsonians, but not necessarily calypsonians who are deserving of such. In other words, once you're a member of TUCO, there's a sense that one has the right to be in the calypso tents. And we have watered down the product of the calypso tents. We have people who should not be in a calypso tent, given what they produce. But we do not analyze it, and therefore we have taken the body of calypso and added a lot of water into it, and therefore we have produced a very watered down product. And as a result, people are not interested in coming to the tents, because what they have to do is to wait for 2.5 hours to hear 1 or 2 good calypsos. In other words, there's no competition amongst the calypsonians to be selected to the tents. And that is one of the major problems facing the tents. We need to produce calypso tents and calypso shows whereby there has been a rigid selection process. When you are selected, you're selected on meritocracy rather than on friendship and cliquism or family. Those variables should not be part of the selection process for one's membership in the calypso tent. And TUCO has embraced that policy. And that, in my view, is something that we must deal with if we are going to modernize the tent. We also have to deal with the whole digitization of the calypso tents, whereby, again, we can have the product alive, and not only streaming, but you can have a TUCO app where you have the tents, and you can, whilst you're driving or on an all-inclusive party, you can watch the show taking place. So we have to get the tents into the modern era of what is taking place in entertainment.
And then what about even the archive of the calypsos that have gone before? Because I mean, we have such a rich collection of songs that that describe all of the events in our history in such beautiful ways. But
Yes.
those things are being lost every year, and especially after a calypsonian passes on, those are lost. How do we ensure that we keep those little treasures for the future generations?
Well, I wouldn't agree with you in the fact that to say that they are lost. They're not lost. They are just not packaged properly, or they are not stored for the public's benefit. In other words, we have collectors throughout the world, and in Trinidad, for example, like Zeno Constant, the former Sprangalang, myself, and others. We have the information. What we need to do at TUCO is to develop a formalized administrative research and developmental program whereby the information, all those calypsos you talk about, we need to preserve them and make them available to the public in a very professional way. In other words, we have a crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago, and over the years, calypsonians have presented theories, philosophies, solutions, ideas how to deal with crime and criminality in the country. We have not done anything about that. And therefore, what is critical is that we must form an alliance with the Ministry of Education. I understand there's an MOU already with the Ministry of Education, but to take it a step further to ensure social studies and the calypso literature becomes part of this educational system, especially geared towards the primary schools and secondary schools.
And then go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I'm saying we have the treasures there, we have the information there through the calypsos, but we have not used that. We have not been able to formalize an avenue where it could be projected and utilized to the benefit of the society. And the only way to do that is through collaboration with the Ministry of Education.
And what about getting calypso on the radio? Because we've heard that argument so many times over the years. I mean, we only hear calypso in the calypso tent or on the stage for Calypso Monarch. You know, how can we get it into the mainstream in the same way that soca is or chutney is?
again, it has to do with a societal mindset. It's in this way we really cannot blame TUCO and the Calypsonian. It has to do with the people responsible for marketing, in their marketing on their radio stations. The business community who feels that their target audience may not like calypso, and therefore they don't play calypso. They prefer to play R&B, and therefore what we have to recognize as a society that if we do not appreciate our own, then no one else will. And therefore, the business community has a major responsibility to play to ensure that calypso is part of the mainstream of our music. But how do we get that? When most of the business community and radio station owners are foreign oriented. And again, they when you see calypso as part of the carnival scenario, even soca, you may play more soca, yes, but even soca, if you listen to any of the mainstream radio stations today, if you hear 2 soca selections, you're lucky. And they will probably play the popular ones out of carnival. So this is the societal mindset we have to deal with. It's more than just TUCO. But one of the strategies we will try to employ is to own our own radio station. You know, not the basic, we may have an online station, which is good, but in our society, the traditional type of radio stations are still what people are geared to listen to. And therefore, that will be a major focus, is to get our own radio and television station as soon as possible.
And then what about coming back home to Tobago? What about in terms of, getting our Tobagonian Calypsonians on the stage? Because it's a complaint that, when our artists, and this goes across the board, not just for Calypso, but it goes across the board for many other aspects or competitions, that when Tobagonians go down to Trinidad, they may get on the stage, but they don't get to advance to the finals and so on. And they often claim victimization from judges who think that nothing good is coming out of Tobago.
Well, the judging is always a debatable situation. Whether you're from Tobago or from San Fernando or TUCO, you'll always have your own version of why you're not selected to a particular final or competition. I won't deal with that because, judging is a very peculiar thing, and I won't want to get into that. But what is important for me, though, in terms of Tobago, is to ensure that the Tobagos of the past, the Tobago competitions, are reinstated. Tobago has been ignored and neglected by a leader who seems to be only focused on his gratification. And therefore, if the leader isn't showing interest in his own zone, then obviously the zone will be disrespected by the other zones and the other members of the Calypso community. So that's the first thing I want to do, is to spend some time in Tobago, reopen the office, ensure the administration is up to par, recognize some of the elder Calypsonians who are not even aware of the election coming because they have been ignored, they have been pushed aside by this current leader. And therefore, Tobago becomes a major part, as it's supposed to be, in the scheme of things for the advancement of Calypso in Trinidad and Tobago and the world.
All right, and as we're getting ready to wrap up, Dr. Ottley, sorry, could you just just going to give you a minute to, just to speak to the people that are going to be having a vote in the TUCO elections as to why you should be the new president of TUCO?
I want to speak specifically to my brethren and sisters from Tobago. As I said, as a member of the Tobago family, I feel Tobago has been ignored, Tobago has been ostracized, the Tobago Calypsonians have been divided by aimless leadership, and we need to get back to the core of what makes Tobago an important part of the Tobago Unified Calypsonians organizations. And therefore, if you want to come back as a major part of the TUCO establishment, I'm asking Tobagonians, come out and vote for me, support me. I will ensure that you receive the recognition, the opportunities, the financing that you so deserve to make the Tobago zone one of the beacons of our zonal system into the Tobago Unified Calypsonian organization.
All right, I want to thank you so much, Dr. Rudolph Ottley, for being on with us and for sharing your vision, and wish you best of luck in the TUCO elections coming up in a couple of weeks' time as we wrap this conversation.
Okay, thank you very much. And just to remind you again, it's on Saturday the 19th, the elections at the Grandstand Peace Park Savannah. Thank you.
All right, great. All right, viewers, well, that's it for GMT this morning. I want to thank you so much for being on with us. And just make sure that as you go off today to do your business and whatnot, that you remain safe on the roads. It's a bit of a rainy weather out there. So just be mindful of that as you go out. All right, so have a safe and wonderful day, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Wake up with Kandace and Denise.
Let's go. It's a brand new morning, rise up to a brand new dawn.